Hello and welcome! Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorite Star Wars movie, and the Nintendo DS game is one of my favorite licensed games on the system. But sadly, as good as the DS game is, it wasn't my first time playing Star Wars Episode 3 as a video game. That honor is reserved for the PS2 game made by The Collective. I used to rent this game a lot when I was younger, and now that I have it again properly, how does the game actually hold up? Today's video is sponsored by us at 16-Bit Games. 16-Bit Games has a variety of mobile games available on Android and iOS. They're fun, fast action games designed with mobile devices in mind, which means they all look, play, and control well, no matter what device you have. Play them today for free from the links in the description below. Star Wars Episode 3 for the PlayStation 2 is surprisingly similar to the DS game. Both are beat-em-ups with experience and level-up systems. Both games are based off the movie stories and have levels based off of these action set pieces. And in both games, you can play as both Obi-Wan and Anakin. Other than the shift between 2D to 3D, these games are remarkably similar. But the Collective game has a little more to it. You see, in the Ubisoft game, they added 3D space combat to pad out the experience, while the Collective's game added an entire one-on-one fighting system with spreadsheets worth of combos and moves, with unlocks to give you even more combos to moves to add to your spreadsheet. On paper, mixing these seemingly similar fighting genres together should have worked about as well as the space combat stages did in Ubisoft's game. But instead, the fighting genres mixed about as well as water and oil. Normally in beat-em-ups, combat is just a slight hindrance, a tool to break up the monotony of mostly linear level design, or maybe even to tell small or interesting stories. And in normal gameplay in the Collective's game, combat encounters are exactly that. It's fun, flowing, with enough variation in the enemy design to always keep you on your toes. But once you end a level and you walk into a boss with a lightsaber, it slowly becomes a slog. I've tried being aggressive, I've tried being strategic, I even tried being defensive. But I might as well have just been mashing buttons the entire time, since I kept losing encounter after encounter. I spent hours just trying to get to grips with this combat system and its combos to just no avail. And I weirdly wish that the Collective went more towards what Ubisoft did for these type of encounters. Instead of making it like a Mortal Kombat one-on-one boss fight, they should have made it more like a puzzle, trying to find the pattern or the strategy to go and actually beat the boss just to get through it. Something else that I missed from the Ubisoft game is the ability to quit a level and switch your character at any point from Anakin to Obi-Wan when the going got just a little too tough. Allow me to play the game as I see fit and go back to difficult boss fights with a more clear mind. But in the Collective's games, you're forced to stick out that boss fight. And with the game's linear nature, it means that your level dictates which character you can play as. So if you're like me and you can't beat Mace Windu, you will get stuck there for a very, very long time. At least until you discover that Anakin has a win button by literally punching his opponents until they die. In fact, this exploit works so well that you can use it for any boss fight and not have to worry about that wall and memorization of combat to win. I wonder how different the movie would have been if Anakin was able to pull this off with his fight against Obi-Wan on Mustafar. I think there'd be a lot less of that twirling and flips, or in Anakin's case, a lot less loss of limbs. Though, speaking of the movie, one of the coolest aspects of this game is just how well the game at the time was able to transition from film clips to in-game cutscenes. And I know the PS2 isn't the graphical powerhouse that it would have been, even at the time. But with the game's art direction, choice of voice actors, and the use of John Williams' score means that the final product looks and sounds close enough to the actual movie that you can almost put the two side by side and be a little surprised when the game did transition from a film clip to an in-game cutscene. The game was even able to add in cut content from the movies and change a few scenes here and there to make a little more sense in terms of the gameplay, even if it breaks a bit of canon. And honestly, it's fine. My only complaint is just how whiny Anakin sounds, but I think that's just because I'm used to Matt Launter as Anakin from the Clone Wars rather than how Anakin actually sounded in Episode 3. But I do have to address the elephant in the room, because all of my praise comes from somebody who played this game at the time. Compare Episode 3 now, side by side, to any modern Star Wars game, and Episode 3 looks really dated in comparison. But what isn't dated is the game's story, and much like the Ubisoft game, the Collective's game story is focused primarily on the action set pieces which were established in the movies. But unlike Ubisoft's games, which was stuck strictly with the movie's plotline, the Collective's version was able to expand upon the story, adding in not just content which was originally planned for the film and eventually was cut or potentially changed, but also expanding upon the scenes from the movie. Despite its difficulty, I feel the fight between Anakin and Mace Windu was done better in this game, as the game does a better job showing Anakin's distrust in the Jedi Order being justified and making his transition into the dark side have just a little more impact. I just wish the game told more of this film's story than what's here, as at times it does feel like the Collective expects the player to have watched the movie first before playing their game. But overall, I feel that the Collective's version of Revenge of the Sith is not just a good license game, but also a surprisingly good adaptation of the film. Honestly, this game feels like a spiritual predecessor to the Star Wars Force Unleashed games, and if that sounds like that's your cup of tea, I'd absolutely recommend getting this game, especially as a fan of Star Wars. But if you're looking for more of a pick up and play Star Wars type experience, I'd honestly stick with the Nintendo DS game. Either way, both games are good and some of the cheapest Star Wars games you can find on the market today. So if you see either one of these games, I think it's absolutely worth adding to your collection. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a great day, and as always, take care. And don't forget, every Friday there will be a new poll for the 16-bit viewer special. Vote for which games you want us to review on this channel's community tab. Links will be provided below.